seconds.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Gemma Walker. I'm one of the senior clinical embryologists here at Herts Essex Fertility Centre. Really pleased that you guys are able to get online today. What we're going to do this evening is, I'm afraid it's going to be a lot of my voice, but what I'll do is I'll talk you through some of the services that we offer at the clinic, how they might be applicable to you, and sort of try to talk you through kind of an example of what fertility treatment might look like if you were to come through at Herts and Essex. Throughout, we've got some of my colleagues on the Q&A section on the Teams chat. So if you go onto Q&A, you can type a question at any point. They'll be trying to answer them as we go. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, if there's any questions that we still haven't got round to answering, we will continue to answer the questions even once the main portion of the presentation is over. So don't worry if you don't think of something till near the end, we'll still tackle them before the day is over. Okay, so I'll begin now by going through our presentation. It's a PowerPoint presentation with a shared screen. So if you have any problems with the technical stuff, you can pop that into the chat, but otherwise it should all go fairly smoothly. So we'll go through a bit of an intro on sort of the clinic generally, then rattle through the presentation, which kind of goes through, as I say, the steps involved in most fertility treatments. We'll then go through your Q&A. We also ask for some feedback. So if you've had a good experience this evening, or if there's anything that we didn't cover that you really wish we had, pop that into the feedback as well, and we'll try to work on that for next time. And then because you can't be here today in person, I'll be showing a clinic video that we had recorded last year, which kind of just shows you a bit of what the inside of the clinic looks like, and a bit more about sort of, you'll see some of the faces that you'd see regularly when you do come into the clinic in person, just to try to kind of open that door for you a little bit so you can see behind. We've also got a special discount offer for anyone who attends this evening, which I'll give you the details for at the end of the presentation. So do keep an eye out for that, and then you've got that for if you'd like to take advantage afterwards. So tonight's team, you've got me, as I said, I'm one of the embryology department. You've also got Sharon Julians, who's our operations director, and Mana Marks, who's our wellness and marketing manager as well. So we're all here today. We've also got one of our nurses who's available on the Q&A as well, Soraya Jones, and she will be going through your answered questions as well to answer those for you. Please do bear in mind, though, that we don't have access to all of your full medical history this evening. So if you've got questions that are really specific, you'll need to give us a little bit of background as well. And it might be that we're not able to answer it fully today. But any questions that we can't answer today, we'll get back to you properly tomorrow once we've had a chance to really review. We'd rather give you slightly delayed information than the wrong information. So Herts and Essex as a clinic, we were founded in 1989. Our founder is actually still a member of the staff here, so we see him around the clinic quite a bit. He's one of our medical team, Michael Amoy. And we've got over 35 years of experience as Herts and Essex Fertility Centre, which is over 8,000 babies born, which is lovely. All of the procedures that we perform as a clinic happen in clinic, like they're all under one roof. There's no satellites. You wouldn't have to go anywhere else for any of your medical care as a patient with us until you have to be discharged back to your GP and possibly to early pregnancy assessment unit. So all of the fertility side of your treatment would be done here. And we have a state-of-the-art clinic. It's been purpose-built, so all of our rooms they've always been what they are. There's none of these sort of, oh, it used to be the canteen and now it's somewhere where we're doing an egg collection. There's none of that. It's all been purpose-built and is all fully kitted out with everything that we need. So we offer a lot of services, and the services we offer and that are useful for people really largely depends on what you're looking for from your treatment. So we do assessments of people who may be considering starting to try to have a family in the future, or to grow their family if they already have children. And these are designed for people who want to kind of know what their fertility status is, and to understand a bit more about their chances of a natural conception, or whether or not fertility treatment might be an option for them. We do also offer some gynecological screening as well. So it's not all fertility based, but the majority of our work is. We do a large amount of donation. and surrogacy at Herts Essex is something that we're really known for. So if you're somebody who needs to be using sperm or eggs or the uterus of somebody else in order to grow your family, then that's something we can absolutely facilitate for the vast majority of patients. We do offer IUI treatments in addition to IVF. So that's one where you don't need to have your eggs collected in order to create the embryos. They're created internally, but we just sort of facilitate that process. And we can offer fertility preservation, so freezing of sperm, eggs, and of embryos, which is a really good option for people who want to consider preserving their fertility for the future, whether because of medical reasons or if it's just something that you want to know that you've got an option for in the future but aren't ready to continue your family now. And we also offer pregnancy scans and the Harmony test as well. So dependent on where you are in your journey, that there's really something for everyone. If you come through for a fertility assessment, we have a couple of different packages available. Naming these is always a nightmare because it's really hard to separate out who a specific package is designed for. We've used the terms here to denote the biological sex of the people. So a female fertility assessment is for somebody who is expecting to use their own eggs and or their own uterus, and a male fertility assessment is for somebody who expects that they're most likely producing sperm. And then a couple fertility assessment is for any two people who want both of their fertilities to be assessed, regardless of whether or not you're making sperm, eggs, or have the uterus. So those options are available for anyone who wants to get a better picture of what their fertility status is. The gynae scans that we offer are usually in with a view to pregnancy. So we have a saline infusion sonography, or a CIS, or the HyCoSy. Both of these allow us to assess the uterine cavity. So you come in essentially for a scan, and it's done in as a day patient. So you come in for the appointment and then you can head home afterwards, and you'll be usually you're okay to drive. If you need sedation for that, that is available, but there is an additional cost, and it does make it quite a lot of a longer process. But generally, most of our gynecological scans are done as quite a quick appointment for you, so you get a lot of information really rapidly there. Aside from the sort of services in clinic, we also want to support all of our patients to be as healthy as possible, because we know that if your body is as healthy as it can be, it will make the best sperm, eggs, and embryos that it can do. And so as part of that, we have the Fit for Fertility website, which can be accessed through ours or directly on its own site. And this just gives you more information about diet, exercise, and sort of all the things you can do short of having fertility treatment that can help to facilitate your chances of having a pregnancy, whether if that's something you want to try to do sort of down a natural approach, or if you'd rather have fertility treatment, there's advice there for all. So the treatment pathway for sort of the average patient, what we've done here is try to assume most of the things that usually a patient will need. And the trouble is that's not really a thing anymore. Every patient or couple that we see has a very different requirement from us, dependent on what your aims are, whether or not you're planning using your own sperm, eggs, embryos, your own uterus. All of these things will make the treatment pathway different, but what we've tried to do here is kind of show you an overview of what may be included. But anyone having fertility treatment will begin with fertility consents. So this is a platform that we work alongside. You're sent the login details in advance and asked to complete a series of online forms, and there's some videos to watch so that you understand a bit more about the process and what will be coming your way. You go through all of those and you have to upload your identification as well, because we need to know that we are dealing with the right people for confidentiality reasons. And you're also given the opportunity to sign up for the Salve app, which is a free application which you can use to privately message with the clinic. You can also see all of your appointments on there. Your results can be uploaded on request, and or you can see all of your medication. So once you go down the fertility route and you're being prescribed medications on the app, it will tell you when to take them and what to take. So it allows you to really have control over your treatment with much more information right at your fingertips. From here, you then attend a pre-assessment. This is an in-person appointment, and it needs to be in person because as part of this, we will usually be measuring your height, weight, and also taking your blood pressure for many of our patients. It's important that we know people's height and weight because of the BMI regulations. The reason that BMI is so important is that if you are having eggs collected, you will most likely be having a deep sedation for that. And it's only safe to sedate people using that method under a certain BMI. And that's in part because we are a standalone clinic, so we don't have a hospital attachment to us, so we have to have these measures in place. So that's one of the things that we'll be measuring from you. If you're concerned that your BMI is too high, then we can absolutely help to support you to try to get that lower. The Fit for Fertility can be really useful for that too. So it doesn't have to be an absolute barrier. It's just something you need to be mindful of. If you are providing sperm for treatment, you'll also be asked to have a semen assessment before at this pre-assessment stage. Usually we ask that you produce your sample at home, drop the sample off, and then we analyse it, and you'll get your results at your consultation. If you've had previous analysis or any tests elsewhere, it's always a good idea to provide them to us if you can. Many of the tests would still be relevant and can still be accepted, so you may not need to have all of the tests again. So it's definitely worth sharing with them if you sharing them with us if you have them. And then you'll have your consultation. This is done online through Teams. The doctor will send you an invitation on the day of the appointment, and at that appointment they'll be able to discuss your medical history, what your expectations are, what your objectives are throughout treatment, talk through any results for any of the tests that you've had at Herts Essex, and ultimately outline some potential treatment options for you. We like to come up with a plan of what we might want to explore doing going forward. And then you've got some time to have a think about that before you have to commit to having the treatment that's been outlined. And if anything comes up in the meantime, these plans can be adjusted. But from the consultation, you should be able to leave with a plan of attack, which I think for most people is really a good point to get to. You will be required to undertake some screening bloods. For all patients, we require HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, chlamydia and gonorrhea. We also require additional screening dependent on whether or not you're providing the eggs or the uterus into the situation. So AMH is important for egg providers, and the rubella is important specifically for uterus providers. So those ones we will, when you discuss with the doctor, they'll work out which tests you do and don't need to make sure that you're only paying for what you need. It's really important that you have those tests no more than 3 months before having treatment. The law is really clear on this one. You have to have your screening test within 3 months of eggs or sperm being collected for treatment. So what we don't want to do is have your screening bloods and then you go away and have a think and decide what you want to do. We should only be booking you in for the bloods once you've already decided to pursue treatment. And that way 3 months should be plenty of time for us to get everything else in place that you need. So just bear that in mind. If you're going to have an IUI, this is an intrauterine insemination, or sometimes called a DI if you're using donor sperm. And essentially what we do here is we take a sperm sample, we spin it down in our centrifuge to collect out the most healthy looking sperm that are available. So these are sperm that are shaped normally and are swimming nicely. From this, we then take that sperm solution and we place it directly into your uterus at the right time, and then the sperm are free to swim up the fallopian tubes and to hopefully fertilise an egg that's been released. So this is a really useful method for people who want to use their own sperm, their own eggs and their own uterus, but also for people who want to use donor sperm. But it does really rely on you having tubes that are open, so that's something that we would need to test in advance. But it's also reliant on us being able to feel that this is the most effective method to get you to a healthy pregnancy. The IUI is much less invasive than IVF treatment, where we would have to collect the eggs from you, but it does have a much lower success rate per treatment cycle. So it can be a bit of a toss-up for different couples as to whether or not this is something you want to explore. But it can be a really useful tool for people who have psychosexual problems. So people who are unable to have sex regularly for whatever reason, IUI sometimes is a good option because we know that the problem is not to do with anything further downstream. It's most likely to do with this. So that's something we can explore with you at consultation. But assuming that you're going to go down a more standard IVF treatment pathway, this will begin with your period. So if you're someone who has regular periods, then it's usually quite simple to try to plan in all the timings for this. But if you're having your eggs collected and you don't have regular periods, it's not a barrier. It's just something we have to take into account to try to work out when to time all these things in. So you call us when you have your period, and we'll book you in for your ultrasound scan, which is usually done within the first 3 days. And after this point, you can then begin your first daily injections. Now, these injections are designed to stimulate the ovaries, because what we want to do is ordinarily one follicle from an ovary will start to grow and develop and ultimately become an egg. But what we want to do is encourage all of the other little follicles that normally would fall by the wayside. We're going to encourage them all to grow. So the way in which we stimulate you will depend on some of the medical history that we've got from you and some of the test results. But ultimately, we plan the amount of injections that you're going to have based on how we think your body will respond to them. And this continues all the way through until you're just about to have your egg collection. There are some side effects often experienced with these medications. It's usually headaches, mood swings, breast tenderness, and bloating. But whilst we obviously want you to be aware of them, we also don't want you to ignore them. So if you are having side effects whilst you're on this medication, it is important that you let us know, because it's oftentimes there are things we can do to help relieve these side effects if you do experience them, which, to be fair, not everybody does. You then go on to begin having scans. We scan to try to see ideally that the ovaries are developing. So this is a scan of an ovary, and you can see here the dark spots. These are the fluid-filled cysts, essentially, that are the follicles. And once we see that these have gotten to a good size, we have a good number of them, we can then start your second drug, which for the majority of patients is a cetrotide-based drug. And what we do here is we try to work out, by giving you this drug, it'll stop your body from ovulating, because we don't want the eggs to pop out of the ovaries until they're ready. But what we will be doing is we'll be monitoring to check whether or not your endometrium, so the lining of the womb, is ready to receive an embryo. So if you're using your eggs and also having your embryo transfer, and you're going to do all of that in the same cycle, then we'll be monitoring these two things, both the ovary and the uterus, at the same time. After you have each scan, you go from one side of the corridor into the other, where you will then discuss with a nurse and go through with them to discuss what your next steps will be. So you never leave the clinic not knowing when your next appointment will be, and you'll always know exactly what you need to do between now and then. When you have your final scan, which we'll only know is your final scan because we'll see that your uterus appears to be ready and that your ovaries are ready, we'll be looking for this nice multi-layered sort of arrangement on the ultrasound scan, and this tells us that your body is ready for your egg collection. When we have that final scan, you will then be given a date and a time of your egg collection. Now, dependent on when that will fall, will then dictate when you're going to have your trigger injection. So you take your trigger injection to get your ovaries ready for the egg collection, and it's usually taken around about 36 hours before. It is important that you take that medication correctly and that you take it at the right time, which can be a bit stressful, but we don't want you to be worrying about that. We will give you really detailed verbal and written instructions, and it'll also all be on your app. So it can feel a little bit of a daunting one, especially as it's often taken at night when you know the clinic will be closed, but you should have all the information you need. So please don't feel that you're on your own for that. And then you'll have your egg collection or your egg recovery. For this procedure, you'll be admitted to our recovery bay, which you'll see in our video shortly. And from there, we'll record all your baseline observations, make sure that you seem healthy and well otherwise, and it's safe to proceed. And then at the same time as that's going on, if the sperm has been provided by your partner on the day, they'll be taken to one of our sample rooms and they'll be asked to produce their sample. Meanwhile, the person having the egg collected will be given their sedation, and whilst they're under sedation in our theatre, the clinician will collect the eggs from your ovary using our ultrasound guided systems. You then go back into recovery, and after a couple of hours, most people feel well enough to go home. You will have had a sedation, so you can't really be on your own once you've had that, but most people do feel well. Sometimes some people experience some nausea and some general discomfort from the procedure, and that's not uncommon. But as I say, the vast majority of people, it's a day case, you won't have to stay overnight. And then you are discharged from theatre, which then bounces your eggs and sperm into the lab, which is where I come in. So in the lab, we rather frustratingly start the clock again. So by this point, you'll be on something like maybe day 14 of your cycle. And because I'm an embryologist, as far as your embryo is concerned, it is day 0 when you have your eggs collected. So you'll have that egg collection, and depending on what you want to do with those eggs, they may be that we're freezing them for you for future use. We are able to store eggs for up to 55 years, but dependent on the consent that you provide to us. And we know that the younger that we store eggs to some degree, the better they're likely to perform when we thaw them back out and use them. But that said, it's not a case of, oh, I'm definitely too old now to freeze my eggs. Like, it's definitely something worth exploring if it's something you're open to. And the doctor will be able to give you much clearer idea of sort of what your chances would be for you personally at your age as well. So that's something that we can certainly consider. Most people, however, that we're doing a collection for are probably going to have those eggs inseminated. So this might be through IVF. When we talk about IVF, it really just means fertilizing eggs outside of the body. But we also use the word IVF to mean traditional IVF. So in this case, we would take a sperm sample that has fallen within normal parameters when we did the assessment, add it to the eggs, and the sperm swim their own way into the eggs and hopefully fertilize them. And that's not suitable for everyone. If you have a sperm problem, then we usually don't recommend standard IVF to you, but it's certainly something that we could explore. The other option is ICSI, and this is a form of IVF called intracytoplasmic sperm injection, which really just means that we're going to pick up a sperm and we're going to pop it into the egg directly. This is really useful for people who have low sperm counts, or sperm that don't swim very well, or sperm that aren't really shaped as we'd hope them to be. And so it really gets over a lot of those hurdles, because what we'll do is we'll be manually selecting the sperm that we want to inject. So here is a video which I'm hoping will play for you. Here we are. Okay, so what we've got here is the needle on the right hand side, which is being held by the ICSI practitioner, and you can see that occasionally the little sperm will swim through there. And the ICSI practitioner is now going to look through the sample and try to find a sperm that they think looks like a good sperm to use for the procedure. You're looking for one that is swimming, the head is a nice shape, the tail is a nice shape, and generally is moving as you would expect it to. And this can take a little bit of time, particularly if you have quite a poor sample, but generally you find the one you want. And you strike it across the tail. This will break the membrane, which doesn't hurt the sperm, but it does stop it moving. You then suck it up into the needle. And once you're happy that you've got control over where that is in the needle, you then position the egg. And you can see here, this egg is ready to be injected because it has a little sort of outgrowth at the bottom here, which tells me the egg is ready to receive a sperm. They then come in with the needle, bring the sperm right to the tip. They push through the shell and then through the membrane of the egg, which you can see takes a little bit of going. They then start to suck back on the egg, and this will pop the membrane of the egg, and then they can eject the sperm, and all of the bits of the egg that they had just sucked back up their needle, all of that goes back in. And once that's done, they then remove the needle and the sperm is where it needs to be. And I appreciate it looks really harsh, but eggs are actually quite robust. And within a few minutes of this procedure being performed, if you put that egg in with eggs that hadn't been injected, even the person who did the injection would not be able to tell you which one was which, because they recover really well. There is a small risk of damage to the egg, of course, as there is with any manipulation, but generally it's considered a safe and effective method, particularly on balance for people who don't have good quality sperm. So from there, I should be able to now move on and show you our next slide, which should show you the other option that we have. There we go. So there's another form of ICSI called PICSI. And for this, when we select the sperm, we essentially choose a sperm that has good maturity levels. We know that only mature sperm can fertilize eggs. So by choosing a sperm that shows us that it is likely to be mature by sticking to the dish that we use for this procedure, we can try to maximize our chances. And this is a particularly useful tool for people who, when we do the semen analysis, have a low HbA score. And that just essentially means that you have less mature sperm. And it's just a tool to allow us to select the right ones. So that's something else that we would recommend to you as part of your consultation process. So once we've done all of that, we leave the eggs overnight with the sperm with them. And the next day we assess fertilization. And what we're looking for is signs that we've got the right amount of DNA in those eggs. So the one here on the left has 2 pronuclei in it. So these are the 2 circles you can see in the middle of the egg. And that's normal, that's what we would expect. One of those will have come from the sperm, one of those will have come from the egg, ideally. But on the right hand side, we've got one there that's got a 3rd structure. And this tells me that when it tried to fertilise, it didn't manage to form into those two shapes properly and has gone for 3. And that means that this egg is very likely to have the wrong amount of DNA. So if we were to try to implant this into somebody, the chances are this would either not implant or would implant and result in a miscarriage. So we can avoid that by only selecting the normal ones. So we would call you and let you know how many normally fertilised embryos you have on day 1. On days 2 and 3, the embryo should start dividing, and at this stage, we do very occasionally do embryo transfers. Usually that's only for people who are going to have an embryo transfer of all the embryos they have. So for example, if you only have 1 embryo, then you can have it back sooner because there's no sort of selection required. But if you're fortunate enough to, say, have 5 embryos, on days 2 and 3, those embryos are going to look really similar. And so it makes it impossible for me as the embryologist to know which one of those is the best one. So, but in those cases, we like to wait until day 5 when the differences are more obvious, and then we can select the best of the bunch for transfer. On day 4, the embryos go through a process of compaction, which is often likened to sort of when a caterpillar pupates before becoming a butterfly. Everything just smushes back down and it has to remodel itself and redevelop all of the structures that it was working towards. And during this stage, there's an awful lot going on in terms of the biology, but in terms of what we can actually see, it's very, very little that we can get information from. So we don't look at the embryos on this day. And then we go on for day 5, by which point we would hope to see expanded blastocysts. Now, if you're going for a day 5 transfer, we will not have looked at your embryo in the meantime. There'll be no updates, and that's because we want to leave it to develop the best it can. We know that usually about 60% of embryos will go on to become blastocysts by day 5 or day 6. So we don't expect them all to. The whole process, we know that not every egg or embryo will make it to the next hurdle, and that's perfectly normal. It feels like a big drop off in numbers, but it is how it's all designed, knowing that. So please don't be disheartened if you find yourself with numbers that are going down. It's actually a good thing because it allows us to choose the best embryos at the end. So for transfer at Herts Essex, we do embryo transfer 7 days a week. So whichever day you have your egg collection is irrelevant because you will be able to have your embryos transferred on day 5. And what we generally do is show you the embryo on the screen, load it into a catheter, bring the catheter around, and the doctor will put your embryo into your uterus. And then before you leave, we give you a photograph of the embryo so you can see what it looked like at that early stage. We offer embryo glue to all patients who are not funded by the NHS. This is just a transfer media that you can use, which tries to mimic the conditions more accurately of the uterus and has been shown that it may help implantation in some patient groups. If we gave it to everyone, it would not increase the number of babies that are born, but it does mean that if you are someone who may benefit, then you've already had the option of having it from the off. So it's something that we do offer here. Now, not everyone will be having a transfer. The best test of if an embryo can give you a baby is to do an embryo transfer on the right day. But the next best thing is PGT, which is pre-implantation genetic testing. And in this procedure, we wait until day 5 and day 6, and then we take a small biopsy from the embryo. We send the biopsy cells off to a genetics lab, and they can read the DNA inside. And they can use that to tell us whether or not the embryo has the right number of chromosomes, which is really important for going on to have a healthy pregnancy and ultimately a healthy baby. But it can also be used if you have a monogenic disease. So if you have a family history of a specific disease which is known to be caused by just one gene that has a problem, then many of these genes can be looked at and we can read the DNA to see if the embryo is affected by that before the embryo transfer. And similarly, PGT-SR allows us to screen out embryos that have structural chromosomal rearrangements. And again, that's something that's inherited from the sperm or egg provider. So if you are somebody who has one of these rearrangements, you most likely would already know. And then from there, we can plan to screen your embryos. So this allows us to prioritise normal embryos over abnormal embryos when we come to embryo transfer, which both can mean that you have a quicker time to the pregnancy that is the one that gives you your child, but also means if you've got embryos in the freezer, you have a much clearer picture of their potential and sort of what your future fertility may be like. And then there's embryo freezing. So any embryos that are not transferred can be frozen. Any embryos that are tested for PGT will have to be frozen whilst we wait for the results. So we can freeze embryos on day 5 and 6, and they can again stay in storage for up to 55 years, dependent on your consent. And whilst they're in the freezer, they don't really change. So they'll always be the embryos of the person who was however old they were on egg collection day. So for example, if you have your egg collection at the age of 30 and don't have your embryo transfer until you are 40, those embryos that have been in the freezer for 10 years have the same chance as they did on the day they went in there. So it's a way of sort of preserving their that good potential and that good prognosis embryos. Not everyone has freezing after an embryo transfer. It's about 50% of patients that will have an embryo transfer plus freezing. So it is a lovely bonus when we get it. It's not the norm, but any embryo that we think has a good chance of surviving the freeze thaw process is one we would consider for freeze. And then once you've had your embryo transfer, you would then have luteal support, which is usually a pessary, but occasionally is also injections. And then you have your pregnancy test, which is 16 days after the egg collection or the calculated egg collection. For some people, you might be doing partner-to-partner donation, so where you have one partner has their eggs collected and the other partner is going to use their uterus. And for that, what we'll be trying to do is time up your cycles to allow this, or more often, we'd freeze the embryos once they've been created, and then on another cycle, prepare your body for an embryo transfer and offer you the luteal support and pregnancy test. The same is true for people who are having frozen embryo cycles. So if we're going to freeze all the embryos for whatever reason, you then come through for another menstrual cycle where you have your luteal support, embryo transfer and pregnancy test. And assuming that your pregnancy test is positive, then you'll come through for your early pregnancy scan, and you can also have the NIPT or NIPT test here, which does screen for some of the conditions in early pregnancy that can give you some peace of mind regarding the health of your pregnancy. So that's really nice to have here as well. We offer egg and sperm donation, so we do have an in-house bank of both, and we also work with external banks that can help us to provide more choice to patients on sperm and egg donors. This can be really useful for people in same-sex relationships, single people, anyone who's undergone anything that may have drastically impacted their fertility, so for example chemotherapy, and also for people who are older perhaps, who may not have such good egg reserves going forward. Similarly, we offer surrogacy. Since 2012, we've performed over 350 cycles of surrogacy, which is actually a really big share of the number of surrogacy cycles in the UK generally. We have a dedicated surrogacy team, so they liaise with surrogates, with intended parents. They can help you to find egg and sperm donors if you also need that service as well. And we do offer two different types: full or host surrogacy, which is where the same person provides their eggs and uterus, or partial straight surrogacy, which is where we have an egg provider, a sperm provider and a uterus provider, so that's 3 individuals there. So all of that is things that we can absolutely take in stride. The paperwork can be quite complicated on these because of wanting to make sure that you have the correct parenthood, but all of that can be we can guide you through all of that to make sure that everything is as simple as possible once the pregnancy is up and running, basically. Now, many patients may be eligible for NHS funding, and it's important that you explore this route before considering having private treatment, as if you've had private treatment and then try to claim NHS funding, you're often no longer eligible. So it's a good idea to start with your GP if you haven't already. But if you are in the 3 ICBs of Mid and South Essex, North Central London or North East London, we already have an NHS contract available with those 3. So if your GP is within their catchments rather than your home address, it's all based on your GP, then you may be able to select us as your clinic of choice. For more information on this, you can see that on our website. We've got an NHS funded treatment button. If you click that, and it will take you through to the info. But here are the sort of districts that are included within the different ICBs. So this is the North East London district, the Mid and South Essex, and the North Central London. If you are not within any of these groups, then unfortunately we don't have the contract to provide NHS care for you here at Herts and Essex. But because of the wide range of services we offer, you may still be able to use us for fertility assessments, or even just for more information. If you have a consultation privately, that doesn't preclude you from having NHS funding. So it's important that you sort of consider both options as you go down the route as well, particularly as many NHS areas do have quite a long waiting list too. Of course, if you're not eligible for NHS funding, or you find that the NHS waiting lists are just too long for you, there are other options as well. As part of our egg and sperm bank here, we do also offer sharing schemes. So essentially that would be where your treatment is subsidised because you are going to share some of your sperm or eggs with other people who require them. So it means becoming a donor, essentially, in order to facilitate your own treatment. And that's something we can support you with and guide you through if you're eligible. If you want to come through for a new consultation to explore your options, as I said earlier, we have currently got a discount offer for January. So this is a 50% discount off your new consultation if you book before the end of the year. So it's an £125 consultation. The blood tests and semen analysis are separate, but this essentially is the price of the time that you spend with the doctor, going through all of your medical history and working out what your options might be. So do take advantage of that if you would like to. You just need to let us know at booking that you attended today's talk, and they will have a look on the system and put you up that way. So that's how that gets applied. There's also other fertility funding options as well. So we do have partnerships with Access, Gaia and Assured. These are three quite different systems, but essentially they either allow you to buy now, pay later for your treatment, or to essentially say, I'm prepared to spend this much money on this amount of treatment. And what they'll do is you pay them the fee, sorry, and then you're funded for as much treatment as you've paid for. But if you fall pregnant, if you're fortunate enough to fall pregnant sooner, then you don't have any further treatment as part of the package. But critically, if you are unfortunate and do not have success, you may be eligible for certain refunds, or some of the money can come back to you, dependent on the kind of package that you go for. So I'd advise that you have a look at these three websites directly to get more information, to work out if any of them are suitable for yourselves. And you can access them all as well through our website, but they'll be the people who'll be able to tell you whether or not you're eligible for their different programmes. It's really important for us at Herts and Essex to consider not only the medical side of things, but also the emotional and general well-being of our patients and of our staff. It's been proven time and time again that people who have high levels of stress have poorer prognosis when it comes to trying to get pregnant, which is just an absolute kicker, because of course it's so stressful trying to get pregnant, and particularly if you find it's taking longer than you hoped. So we try to help support you through that as much as possible, and I'm sure if any of you follow us on Instagram and all the other socials, you'll see that we are very keen on trying to partner with other organisations that support patients as well. We also have access to a UK registered dietitian, Alex Ballard. She can offer one-to-one consultations to talk to you about making sure that your nutritional choices are helping your body to be in absolutely peak performance, ready for your treatment or for trying to conceive naturally. So she's someone else that we can help to put you in touch with in order to make sure you get the very best out of your treatment pathway, and ultimately that you try to get not only the best experience, but also the best outcomes. So why choose us? As I said, we've got over 35 years of experience, and we offer everything under one roof. We have the 7-day-a-week laboratory service, which means that you're not at any point being sort of negatively impacted by the days that your cycle falls on. We understand that your body will do what your body's going to do, and we just need to kind of tag along for the ride and be ready when it is. So we absolutely offer that. We have an electronic witnessing system at Herts and Essex, which many clinics do have now, but essentially that means that when we're using your samples, there is absolutely no chance that you could at any point make any mix-ups or mishaps, because the electronic system is tracking exactly where your samples are at every moment. And if there was ever an even risk of any sort of cross-contamination, all the alarms go off. It's a really robust system, so you can rest easy knowing that your samples are being treated properly, that we have full traceability, and that they're safe, which is really important. We've got over 8,000 babies, and we'd like to have more. So if you want to come through for treatment, it's in everyone's interest to try to get this going and get this working. So yeah, your baby can be one of the 8,000, which would be lovely. We aim really hard to support our patients through treatment. We know that it's a stressful thing. We know that most people don't want to have treatment. It's not what we all sort of grow up wanting, but we are here for you, and we want to make the process as pain-free as possible, and ultimately for there to be the good things that you do get out of it. You know, the opportunity to have more information and to have more control over your body and over your treatment is really important to us, that you have that. And then also we have free parking. So we have a car park on site. We're fairly easy to find. Traffic's not usually so bad, but we are also reasonably accessible with the train station just 15-20 minutes up the road by foot, and by Uber obviously even quicker. So we're quite easy to get to, which I think is something we always make light of, but actually it is a really big factor in deciding where to go for your treatment, because you will have to attend the clinic a couple of times, and the last thing you want is an additional stress of a bad journey. So we really value your feedback throughout the treatment process, and that starts today. So if you'd like to complete the short survey, which will be put up in the Q&A, please do go through that and let us know if there's any information I didn't cover with you today that would have been really useful. If there's anything I've said that has worried you or that you're concerned about, please do put that there for us to work on, because we're trying to be as sort of, I'm trying to second guess what you want to know. So if you can tell us if there's anything I've missed, that's really useful for the next batch of patients, and probably also for yourself, because I can flag it and give you the answer next time I see you. As with all places now, please follow us on all our socials. It's a really good tool, not only just to sort of keep you abreast of what we're doing as a clinic, but also the other fertility related content that we get from outside sort of partners. When we're posting things, we're making sure that what we're posting is appropriate and as fact checked as can be on socials. So it's a really useful and powerful tool to get useful and reliable information. If you want to book an appointment, you can call the number for tomorrow. Our lines will be open from 8, and you can also email the inquiries at hertsandessexfertility.com line. I appreciate that for a lot of people getting to the phone is quite difficult, because maybe you don't want to have these conversations at work. So the email system works really well, and if you do come through for treatment, then the Salve app as well is really useful. We have new consultations available usually within 1 to 2 weeks. We have more availability sort of the further away we get, but there are usually some consultations available in the first 2 weeks. So just let us know if and when you'd like to book that in, and at the moment make the most of that 50% discount as well for having attended tonight. The Q&A is open, so do please continue to type in there. I'm going to now show you our video that we have, so bear with me whilst I stop sharing my big screen and share with you my little screen, which can really go either way, can't it, these technological things? So let's do our best. So that's the media player, and so I'll play this for you now, and then when you're ready, I will finish this and I will continue with the Q&A afterwards. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for attending. I hope that was really useful for you. As I say, post any questions if you've got any more, and we'll work our way through them now. But in the meantime, we will say good night to you now, and yeah, hopefully see you all soon. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.